report out of The Advocate. The AFL-CIO endorsed Betty McCollum. We're going to read from that. I'm David Sandbeck, of course, running to challenge Betty McCollum to represent the 4th Congressional District. So let's have some fun. Here we go. Betty McCollum quoted here, "I'm on the phone from about 8:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night, and then on and off a little bit on the weekends." She laughed. "It's not the most effective way for us to legislate, but we're figuring it out how to do it." After being endorsed by the Minnesota AFL-CIO last month, the 10-term DFLer in the state's 4th Congressional District carved out 30 minutes of phone time for the interview with the union advocate, featured in our May 2020 edition. How generous, Betty. Thank you. 20 minutes. Instead of dialing for dollars from big donors, I think that's pretty generous. Thank you. All right. The interview, which has been edited for length and clarity, took place before April 24th when Congress passed the $484 billion relief package with funds for small business loans, hospitals, and testing. Let me tell you, that was a heist. It benefited the plutocracy. 80% of the economic benefits went to the millionaire class, the donor class, and not the common people. And it's something Betty pursued and was complicit in having happen. So let's continue. From the Union Advocate, federal lawmakers have so far passed 3 sweeping measures to address the public health and economic crisis caused by COVID-19. Where have you directed your focus during this process? Betty McCollum. My focus, first and foremost, has been on working people and their families, and on making sure we have healthcare facilities that are open and able to run. That meant having the personal protection for frontline workers in our hospitals as well as in our community clinics. And then we need to make sure that we have testing, which the president has failed miserably at, in order to open up our economy, in order to lift some of these stay-at-home orders. We have to test people. We have to have tests, people, to be able to diagnose quickly and effectively so that we can work on the next phase, which is coming up with a treatment and coming up with a vaccine. All right, so, the overconsolidation of the medical supply industry, like testing, is part of the problem. These terrible trade agreements have facilitated this. Betty supported Trump NAFTA, and that did not improve things. So, there's more at work here. And as far as the personal protective equipment, we're still short on that. And so, again, the primary benefits of this CARE Act, they really cared about the plutocracy and not the common people. So let's continue with Betty's response. So my focus has been on what we need to do to keep our families safe. Union Advocate, next question. We're still hearing alarming accounts from healthcare and other frontline workers about the lack of PPE and medical equipment. Is there more Congress should do, or is it now a supply chain issue that falls more on the executive branch and states? Betty McCollum. This is a supply chain issue that I have been concerned about since we had our last epidemic with H1N1 and SARS. When I was in the Minnesota State House, I had the opportunity to work with former state epidemiologist Dr. Michael Osterholm. He has been a mentor with me on this. When we were going through the anthrax situation in Washington, D.C., I learned we don't keep enough of a stockpile of manufacture enough of the things we need. Masks, gowns, syringes, cotton swabs. They need to do more tests. There are so many things we don't manufacture in this country. When trade shuts down because of war, trade shuts down because of disruption, or trade shuts down because of pandemic, we as a country make ourselves vulnerable. Okay, that's all true. And our trade deals have made this happen. And again, Betty supported Trump NAFTA and supported candidates who also supported these terrible trade deals. So let's continue with Betty's statement. It's something a lot of us in Congress have been talking about for years. Talk, no action. So here's another thing. Betty's on the Subappropriations Committee for Defense. Okay, she is a ranking member on this committee. So instead of spending on preparedness for this, we've been spending on the war machine. And she takes money from Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. And so she is complicit in this mismanagement and this lack of preparedness. In more ways, she is more culpable than typical members of Congress. Again, because she is on the Sub-Appropriations Committee to appropriate funds for our defense than is other congressional representatives. But let's continue. She's been talking about this for years. She continues. Then there's a crisis, goes awry, and everybody doesn't want to deal with it. We have to deal with it. I hope we've learned our lesson. Okay. Union advocate. Congress has allocated a lot of money to make sure workers remain employed during the crisis, with access to paid leave if they need it. Are you confident that's happening as the bills are being implemented? And is there proper oversight to ensure corporations benefiting from the stimulus are using that money to pay workers? Oh, that's a good question. Here comes Betty. Two great points that you bring up. With the CARES Act, we knew there were going to be a lot of people who would not be able to go to work. You look at the restaurants right now, they've had to close down because of all the contact. We put in place unemployment insurance, and the state of Minnesota had money to hand out and to get money out the door even faster. Sure, there's been hiccups with that, but I feel confident a lot of these issues will be smoothed out and money will get to the families. Again, 80% of the benefits of the CARE Act, 80% of the benefits of the CARE Act went to the millionaire class. This was a heist that benefited the donor class and left you and me, the common people, out to dry. So, here's your $1,200 one-time insult, where other major Western large economies were able to provide $2,000 a month assistance for a number of months and focused on getting help to people. This is a heist, and so, unfortunately, her confidence was misplaced. Let's continue with Betty's response. But you also asked about oversight. And for the President of the United States to say Congress didn't need any oversight with the way he's been firing people who have been in place for years to work with Congress on oversight of taxpayer dollars, just because he doesn't agree with them, he's firing them. That's wrong. Democrats in the House are going to do our very, very best to make sure these funds are spent the way they're meant to be, to save lives, to keep families from suffering more than they already have, and to get our economy back up and running. Oh, Lord help me. So, who did the Democrats appoint to help oversee all of this? Clyburn out of the Carolinas. Very corrupt. He was caught, poorly executing funds from HUD and making sure that those funds went to his financial backers. It was total cronyism. And so again, her confidence is sorely misplaced. So again, not very good oversight happening from Congress. A lot of failure to convene to provide that oversight in the House of Representatives. And again, it's very little oversight of the billions and billions and billions of dollars that are being spent. And here's a kicker. The billions and billions of dollars that are being spent, right? There's a time limit. So it's like spend it now, use it or lose it. So this idea that there's going to be adequate oversight is largely laughable. But we'll continue with this interview from the Union Advocate. The Union Advocate asks, the Postal Service says it's likely to run out of cash by September. Cities and other local governments are looking at historic shortfalls. Is there any chance Congress could act to address some of these things in a second stimulus? And we know they've had a second stimulus and they didn't act on this. But let's continue. Betty McCollum's response on this second stimulus. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. And we're looking with our authorizers on major infrastructure bill, which on and off the president has been interested in working with us on. We could get back to work. We could get people off the bench building roads, bridges, broadband, energy efficiency in our schools. But we found out Mitch McConnell was not interested in doing that. He's not. But neither we'll continue. We still know that our hospitals need money, and we need money for vaccine work, and we know social distancing works, and we need to figure out a way to get the economy moving safely. So while these businesses lay and wait for that moment when it's safe for workers to go back, we have to keep those small community businesses, the hair salons, the restaurants, the plumbing and electric companies, able to keep their employees on hold in a way that provides them with some stability and security. So I agree with her. We want to take care of the common people. Unfortunately, these Pelosi schemes that we are giving away to the plutocracy aren't cutting it. The benefits are going to the millionaire class and not the common people. And so there's no stability and security for common people. There's security and stability for the billionaire class who are benefiting the most. There's benefits and security to the millionaire class, where 80% of the benefits have gone to. And other large, wealthy Western democracies have given some greater stability and security with a universal basic income for just about everybody, thousands of dollars each month. That's what we should have done here in the United States, the wealthiest country in the history of human history. All right, let's continue. Union advocate. I know you've been a strong supporter of our postal unions here in St. Paul. What does Congress need to do to keep the post office open? Good question. Betty McCollum responds, well, there are bills out there the postal unions have been talking about for years. We just need to pass them. Just think, in a presidential election year, as we slowly start to recover from a pandemic, if we don't have letter carriers out there delivering ballots, we know that we know what the weather can be like here in November. To ask people to social distance and stand in line outside to vote like they did in Wisconsin, that would just be wrong. And I agree, Betty, it would be wrong. Union advocate, would you once again be you will once again be the labor endorsed candidate on the ballot for the 4th district this year? Has the COVID-19 crisis heightened the stakes of our choice this November, not to just locally but nationally? Betty McCollum. I think it really has. When I saw that was happening in China in January, it took my breath away. What a communist government. We don't hear about those things as fast as it happened in Canada or Australia. So we hear about it, it's been going on a long time. COVID-19 is an invisible enemy. That's the only thing the president has said that I'll agree with him on. His job was to work with world leaders, to work with the World Health Organization, to collect the information, to start gearing up for and buy ventilators and personal protective equipment to get what we need to keep Americans safe. And he just failed to do it. His comments speak for themselves. Just like that, the flu, or that it will be gone by spring. None of them were based on science. They were all based on wishful thinking. When all the health and safety people that you look to for leadership is on the line, that's not the time for wishful thinking. That's the time for hard thinking, and he failed us miserably. And I, of course, agree he failed. But he's a miscreant man-child, and he is a threat to our democracy. But at the same time, all of this failure comes from decades of not being ready. So this is an issue. Our preparedness. We had George Bush commenting on our lack of preparedness. We had Obama commenting on our lack of preparedness, and Congress failed to do its job to make sure we were prepared to set up whoever was going to be president for success. And so, of course, Donald Trump is a miserable failure. He's just a two-bit man-child. So, yeah, let's continue. Union advocate. The labor endorsement came despite positions you've taken on mining in northern Minnesota. Go, Betty. Yes, I love your positions on northern Minnesota. So we're, yes. Anyways, that are at odds with some building trades unions. What do you say to tradespeople who want an opportunity to work for those jobs? So before Betty continues, right, a lot of those jobs right now are furloughed, and so these mining sectors are very volatile, and there's over-consolidation in northern Minnesota dependent on mining, so we need to diversify their economies and invest. But okay, here's Betty's response. First off, I'm not opposed to mining in northern Minnesota. The way it's often stated generally, I'm a member of the Steel Caucus. I'm on the Defense Committee. I know how important it is to our national security that we have the ability to make it in America. And I've carried a lot of language in the Interior Bill so that steel for taxpayer-funded projects, we make it in America. In the early days of taconite mining, we learned that it caused some great harm to our waterways, and we've been cleaning it up since. We've learned how to be respectful of our environment and not damaging our water quality anymore when taconite mining, the sulfide mining, when we use taconite mining. The sulfide or copper mining in northern Minnesota is a different type of mining than taconite. The waste product kills everything in the water. That's the sulfide. There's no second chance. There's no do-over. And we've seen this in other sulfide mining operations. There's other Superfund sites. And if you've visited the Dakotas, you can look at these Superfund sites. You can even go to Google Earth, and you can take a look at these devastated Superfund sites in the Dakotas that did participate in sulfide mining, and there's still the runoff happening. You can see it on this Google Earth application. Go look at that. And she's absolutely right. The sulfide mining is another animal entirely. Let's continue with Betty's response. The Superior National Forest has 20% of the fresh water in our United States forestry system. All of the water adjacent to the Great Lakes on the Minnesota side is in the Boundary Waters area. We are known for fresh water. We are known for clean water. You need fresh, clean water in order to survive. We have a moral responsibility to protect clean, fresh drinking water for our children and future generations. I think jobs are important. I think jobs in northern Minnesota are extraordinarily important. The only thing I ask is prove it to me scientifically that we can do this safely. And 20 months into a 24-month study, the Trump administration stopped the study. They will not show me one piece of paper trail, one piece of paper from it, not one scrap. I've repeatedly asked for it. It was paid for with taxpayer money. Before the study was completed, they started removing the moratorium on the leases. I think a reasonable person could say, why did you stop the study? It should be great concerns to all of us, including my brothers and sisters in northern Minnesota. Why can't we see the study? What don't they want us to know? Now I love that response. It's all true. And in Wisconsin, they have a prove it first law for mining. We don't have that here in Minnesota. So state legislators, get on that and get on your state legislators about a prove it first law. But in Minnesota, we skirted a law. These sites have to be self-sustaining, and we gave them an exemption to the law in Minnesota. So that's something else that Betty should comment on when given the opportunity, is that these people are given exemptions and privileges from the laws we have in the state of Minnesota, and that is wrong. Let's continue with this union advocate interview. Union advocate. Finally, how has COVID-19 impacted your office's work? Betty McCollum's response. We are here to serve you. Our office is open for business, and we are really anxious to help people navigate their way through COVID-19. All right, so that's the interview. There's a lot of talk about the CARE Act. Again, huge transfer of wealth from the public treasury to the plutocracy, to the donor class. 5% of the population donate to political campaigns. That is largely the class that benefited. Most people don't donate. One way we can empower people, and we can give our voices more power over our elected representatives, is public financing of elections. That's one of my key issues in running for Congress in Minnesota's 4th Congressional District. Public financing of elections is how we challenge plutocracy. We need to take on the military-industrial complex. Betty talks about providing oversight, and it is her responsibility to provide oversight for Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and other big companies that are a part of the military-industrial complex. Instead, she takes their money and she approves these large, unaccountable, unaudited budgets. So here she's talking about accountability, but she has a history of supporting unaccountable, unaudited defense budgets that support this Murder Incorporated all over the world, regime change, just unthinkable tragedy happening every week. Okay, and so we have enabled this famine in Yemen. They might say it's pre-famine, but I think we're at the point where we can call it a famine. And so her call for oversight and her history in a conflict of interest in the Sub-Appropriations Committee for Defense, taking money from the very company she's supposed to provide oversight to, but instead she's a part of the approval of these big budgets and voting for Trump's Space Force, for example, voting for these huge, ever-growing war machine budgets. So this video is getting a bit long. I'm David Sandbeck. Thank you for your time and attention.